So, brief synopsis of chain of events this week. Our first test is currently scheduled for Friday. And the battle work is on the day of. We'll come in, take the test together. I'll be answering questions, probably putting some advice and tips and drawings up on the board for everybody. To help you get ready for that, I want you to have this assignment with you when you start this assignment board. I want you to have this with you at the end of the day so that you can use it and study from. I don't want to take it from you and not understand it. So part of today, we are going to grade these together. I'll take them from you for a moment to just get all the grades recorded, but we're going to grade them together and I'll write everything down, and then you'll have it back.
How do you conduct like study for this? Like, should we just bring work all this time?
That's a great question. I do recommend looking back over the problems that you've done, but I do tend to create practice questions when I give tests. So it's not up yet, I apologize for that, but I'm planning to, by the end of today, have uploaded to our Brightspace classroom some sample questions. Won't be too many, because I don't want to overwhelm you, but I'm going to try to create some that encapsulates all the different things that we've done up to this point. That'll be representative of what you'll see on the test. They'll be low stakes, and I'll give you an answer key so that you can be checking your work the whole time. So that'll be on the Brightspace page, both the document for the practice itself and also for the answer key. I also want to, I'm going to talk briefly today about the things that we've covered, what things to be looking at, and those practice questions will be there for you. My goal is to have those up this afternoon, and it'll just be more practice for you guys. That's what I recommend. That helps. Do you have a question?
Yeah, it's Friday and I didn't know this was due. I don't know, like it's such a house like 0 or whatever. I decided didn't have the problems done. It's okay, whichever. I guess I got used to this having like this 2 weeks for the work problems.
I think I said on last Wednesday, when it was going.
Wednesday? Alright, it's
That said, you were gone when we were going over a lot of this stuff, which I don't want to penalize you for that. I can take yours on Friday. You can have the time to fill everything in and make sure you understand all the questions. I want you to have them. Even if we go over the answers here, I worked the problem with you guys anyway, at least half of them. So I'm okay with you being in the room and writing things down. Just make sure I have a written submission in front of you by Friday, and I'll see it. One other thing about this assignment real quick though, because I fully admit this just exited my head last week. Did anyone manage to actually get shadow data for the pillar before today? Okay.
I kind of tried, but then I kind of ended up putting in my own numbers as well.
Okay. In that case, I have some sample numbers, and I apologize that I just completely exited my head to try to provide some for you before today. But if you didn't have anything for that question because you just didn't take the data and you were waiting on me to email you something, because I did say I would send you numbers if it wasn't sunny, and then again I apologize, it just slipped my mind completely. I have some sample numbers that you can use. So I want to give you time to use these very quickly if you still need to finish that particular question. So let's say that the shadow you measure is 1.33 meters, and the sun angle 75 degrees. If you use these numbers, if you use these numbers, I want you to put an asterisk next to them so that I know that this is the set you're using. If you measured something yourself, like actually got a measurement, put a more normal looking star next to it. If you made something up, I'm going to grade for correct algebra. I just want to know that you fabricated these numbers and they don't match the reality or what I'm giving you. Put a plus sign next to your answer. Just so that I recognize what I'm looking at. So asterisk is my numbers, star is the real pillar, plus sign is made up. Give everyone a second to just get that data down, get an answer for that, or to add the symbols to it. While I'm waiting on that, I'm going to go ahead. Write down everything that you need to know for this test. not stand in the way as soon as I finish this list. Okay. Go over this list together in a second. Everyone who is turning their assignment in today, their homework 4. If you have any questions, anything you still want help clearing up before we look at the answers, and I guess I give you guys a score for the day. Yes.
Number 9, I just don't remember what
Oh, I apologize. This is a common right triangle that shows up frequently because conveniently you can create a right triangle with sides of length 5, 4, and 3. So for this triangle, you know all 3 sides and the right angle.
And it's like the 30 degrees, 60 degrees, over 2.
Surprisingly, no, actually. The actual trick to this one would be finding those 2 angles. Sorry, just providing my plans for the day. It's very rushed and awkward. I apologize. Yes.
So for number 1, I was just looking over my answers. We just have to find the height of the tree, not the whole triangle, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I am having thoughts. I'm feeling that this whole week is a little too rushed for my liking. Does anyone agree?
Is the test supposed to be this Friday?
Yes.
For some reason, I have it written as next Wednesday.
I originally had it written as today, February 3rd, sorry, March 3rd, excuse me. I think that's the day I wrote.
Yeah, but
Okay. I'm thinking though that trying to get the homework finished and graded today, then test review, and then have the test on Friday, feels to me professionally like a little too much too fast. And I don't want to rush you guys. So I'm thinking we can, the new plan I'm developing, I'm sorry to change things on the fly for you guys. I'm trying to do so to make life easier. How about we spend the rest of today looking at homework 4 together, making sure everyone's comfortable. We turn that in by the end of the day, and I'll have it graded for you by Friday. Friday, we will then spend reviewing for this test. I will make sure we have practice questions we can look at together in class and that you can work on yourselves outside of class, and we can make our first test next Wednesday. Then I'll have it graded for you by next Friday. I'll be back and talk about it, and I'll make sure you have the next assignment you can start working on over the weekend. Does that sound fair? Does anyone object to this?
So you said the next Wednesday?
Correct. Again, I don't like changing things surprisingly on the fly, but if I ever do it, it's to try to make life better for you guys. Because I'm feeling rushed this week, which if I'm feeling bad about it, then it can't be a good thing for you guys. So, brief summary. Homework, we will work on it and finish it up and turn it in today. Friday, I will give the graded homework back to you, and you will spend Friday reviewing for test. First test will be next Wednesday instead, 1 week from today. That'll give you time to also look at the practice questions that I will be uploading today as well.
Do we need to turn the practice problems in or no?
No, I'm going to create an answer key that will be a second document beneath it on the Brightspace page. So it'll just be free-form practice that you can do if you want to. I know it would benefit me if I was in this class to have more things to practice instead of just looking at stuff I've already done. So that's the goal of it. Any questions, comments, concerns, or objections? Okay. I'm sorry for all the changes to how things have been going the last couple of weeks. I miscalculated on test dates, and I apologize. I want things to be consistent, but more than that, I want things to be good and fair for everybody. So that will be our current working plan. With that, do please copy these down. This information, I will also make sure it's on the Brightspace page. I'm going to create a tab for the first test. I'll also be revising all the old tabs with what should be contained within them. And there will be a test tab that contains this list of things to study, as well as the practice questions and answer key for those practice questions. You can look at those. For today, I will be collecting homework for at the end of the period, and I will make sure to have it graded for you by Friday. On Friday, I'll give it back, we'll talk about it, and we will look at the sample questions together before the weekend. We've already got one question that we can look at, the 5-4-3 triangle, and I want to address that quickly, because I want to address it with you guys, because the answers to number 9 affect the answers to 10 through 15. So, to elaborate a little bit on common trigonometric entities, this is a triangle that appears pretty regularly in nature because we just kind of like the fact that all the sides are whole integers. It's just, looking at this makes me happy because there's no decimals that I have to see. It's just, if you have the pre-cut pieces of wood, this fits together like this. So this shows up a lot in construction and mathematics in general. However, the angle measures that you need to find aren't not whole integers, sadly. And so what the question has asked us is to set up this triangle. The 5-4-3 has the 5 as the hypotenuse, the 4 as the bottom leg, and the 3 as the tall leg. And to finish the triangle, we just need to find the 2 remaining angles. Since we know all 3 sides, that's pretty straightforward. You can really use most any trig function to get there. So I'm going to label this one as theta, this one as phi, and so how can we get theta and phi from here? Very good. we're going to need to do at least one inverse trig function here, because we don't know either of these angles. At least one thing here is going to need to be inverse trig. We suggested looking at tangent. So tangent of, if we look at theta first, tangent TOA, tangent of any angle is the opposite. So 3 divided by the adjacent, which is 4. And to get theta equals blank, we have to perform the inverse of tangent on both sides. I'm going to write out that full step just for completeness sake. So, inverse tangent on both sides. Inverse tangent cancels with tangent, which will just give us theta equals blank. Your answer here, what you actually get as your answer, will depend on whether your calculator is in radians or degrees mode. If it's in degrees mode, you will get theta in degrees. If it's in radians mode, you'll get it in radians. The only problem comes in if you think it's in degrees, but it's actually in radians. It gives you a number, and then you write down that number as degrees. So make sure to check. Both answers would be correct. You just want to make sure you know which one it is. And from there, we can calculate what theta is. Once we know what theta is, we can use the same method to find phi as well, or phi. We could do, say, inverse tangent, tangent of phi would be 4 over 3. Inverse tangent would find the other angle. But once you know two angles, there's another trick you could do if you wanted to. Finding the first one opens up the rest of it for you. Any questions about this particular one? I am going to go ahead and write theta on the board because you need theta to do 10 through 15. Well, it's not vital, but it helps. In degrees, I've got 36.87. Does anyone disagree? All right. So this one goes here. There's a couple different ways you could find phi, the same method, or simply the everything has up to 180 rule. And now that you have this, I want to look briefly at 10 through 15, because this section is about the trig functions themselves, and all of the trig functions, including cotangent, secant, cosecant. So what those are specifically asking is to find the sine, cosine, tangent, cotangent, secant, cosecant of theta, and theta in this case is the lower left-hand angle of the triangle that we were just looking at. So it's this number right here. We're performing the operator on this. And so you could put, sine of degrees in your calculator and get a number. That becomes a little trickier for cotangent, secant, and cosecant, because at least my calculator doesn't actually have buttons for that. So instead, one should employ the rules that we learned, or rules we reviewed. Tangent theta equals 1 over cotangent theta. So the answer to 3 should simply be the inverse of whatever your answer is to 2. Additionally, sine of theta, whoops, 1 over cosecant theta, and cosine theta is 1 over secant theta. So the first 3 you can collect from your calculators. The second set of 3. One must employ the trig rules. Yes.
What do we put into our calculators? Is that, don't we know everything that's insurance?
We know what David is, we know what the opposite, so that Jason lines.
Correct. So there's really two sets of ways you can arrive at answers for this little batch of questions. You could perform within your calculator sine of this number, and that would give you a number. It would probably spit out sine of, for someone who does physics for a living and has a math minor, I'm really bad at mental math. It's kind of a professional problem. And it's not helped by the fact that between my phone and tiny gear, I always have a calculator on me. Okay, so performing sine of that angle would probably give you an answer of about 0.6. But if you put that into fraction mode, that would be sine of theta equal to 3 over 5. And that's how I have it in my answer key. All the answers in my key I have written as the sine of theta would be 3 over 5, the cosine of theta would be 4 over 5, tangent theta would be 3 over 4. And subsequently, the other three operators would be the same answers upside down. Granted, this is physics, and sometimes that's just going to happen, especially when I'm describing things verbally from the perspective of someone who's been doing this professionally. Sometimes I forget what it's like to do at it, which is actively something I avoid, but it's going to happen. And I appreciate when you guys call me on it, because I want to make sure that I actually give you information that is helpful. Okay. So does anyone have any questions at all about homework 4? Any lingering issues? Any? Yes.
With the 13, 14, and 15, the rules right here, do we like rearrange the equations on them they have to figure out?
Kind of, yes. What these rules can tell us is, so say we know from SOHCAHTOA, tangent theta is opposite over adjacent. Cotangent is the inverse of tangent in every single way, which means the inverse of this would be cotangent theta equals adjacent over opposite. So instead of SOHCAHTOA, you could say cosecant would be hypotenuse over opposite, secant would be hypotenuse over adjacent, and cotangent would be adjacent over opposite. We've got SOHCAHTOA and Cho-Shak-How, which doesn't roll off the tongue as well, in my opinion. Yes?
We have a more 8.
8. Yes, we can. 8 is a complex triangle. But like in other physics classes, we're going to try to turn every single thing into a right triangle. You cannot escape them. The information you are given about the triangle in number 8 is the bottom right side is 6.32 feet long, and the top right angle, sorry, That's not saying that the angle is a right angle, it's the angle on the top right side of the triangle. Just make certain there. This angle is listed as 18.43 degrees, and the left angle is 45 degrees. This is what we were originally given about this particular triangle. And our eventual goal, even though it's not a right triangle, our goal is to figure out the remaining angle and the two remaining sides. All of our trig only works on right triangles, so we have to turn this into right triangles, which I do by drawing an imaginary line there. I'm actually going to, you don't need to change anything in your notes, I'm just going to change something up here so that the scales are a little more correct. Just to make it a little more to scale. In order to attack this, my recommendation is to solve this triangle first, on the grounds that we don't know any of the sides of this triangle, of the leftmost one. We're treating this as two separate triangles now, so we need to solve two separate triangles. Of this rightmost triangle, we have one side and two angles. So we have different methods for finding the other two sides, and this, I'm going to sub-highlight in orange just that part of the angle. So orange is going to refer to triangle 2, and green will refer to triangle 1. Any problems up to this point? Okay. It's okay if there are. I want you to tell me. And again, my recommendation is to finish this triangle first, because that will give us a massive head start on this side when we get there. For this triangle, I'm actually going to redraw it separately, because I'm realizing I'm drawing a lot of things on top of each other. Right angle, 18.43 degrees. Unknown angle there. Call this A, the hypotenuse of 6.32 feet. So I've separated that triangle out because I'm drawing a bunch of things on top of each other. We know the hypotenuse, the right angle, and one other angle. From this information, we can pretty quickly figure out what this angle is. This plus this should all add up to 180. So we can subtract those from 180 to find this remaining one. Thank you very much. And we can use our trig functions to find the other two sides. And we do need both of them. We do need both of these sides to continue. So you can pick either of these angles. I like this one because the question gave this one to me. So if I made any math mistakes here, then those won't affect me if I use this angle to find the other sides. I always default to using the number the question gave me over a number that I found myself. So from this perspective, cosine of 18.43 should be leg A over the hypotenuse, and sine of 18.43 should be B over hypotenuse. And that will tell us both of those legs. We need both of those legs because the A leg of this triangle is the same as the A leg of the left triangle. Because on our split drawing here, it's literally the same side. We've just drawn that imaginary line, and that tells us one leg of both of our new smaller triangles. And that gives us our first side of the leftmost triangle to then continue working. Interesting thing about this triangle, though. If this angle is 45 degrees, what should this angle be? Yep. This is an isosceles triangle, I think. And it's the kind where we have 90, 45, 45. What does that mean about the relationship between its two legs? They're the same thing. So by finding leg A of this triangle, we've accidentally found the two legs of the other triangle as well. And so with all of that information together, we now know this angle and this angle, which will add up to the missing angle for the whole triangle. We now know, now wait, the last thing to find will still be this hypotenuse. That's still a mystery, but that can be solved for with the Pythagorean theorem. We do know, though, this leg and this leg, which together add up to the long side of the whole triangle. So, for the answers of the whole triangle, this angle here is the sum of these two angles. This side is the sum of this leg, which is the same as this leg, plus B. And lastly, perform Pythagorean theorem on this small triangle to find that last leg. Any questions? 7 is a very similar question. I think 7 might have probably is the trickier of the two, but you work them both with the same method, divide them into 2, and study from there. As you guys are making sure that the assignment is as finished and polished as you would like it, I'm going to take a second to organize my desk up here because this pile of papers is actually graded responses that people haven't collected yet. So I'm going to organize these. I apologize for the dishevelment. Okay. So, as you leave today, make sure your homework is in the corner right here. And if you haven't collected one of your past homework assignments, it's probably here. They're face up, so you can see which one's yours. You don't have to go digging through a pile. So make sure to collect your old assignments, especially because they will be very useful for test studying. So let's briefly look at this list that I made. This information will be recorded and available, sorry, what I mean by that is, this list will be written and visible on the Brightspace page. In the same test tab I'm creating that will have practice questions and a key for those practice questions. And this is all of the things that we have covered in the first 4 weeks, first 4 assignments that will be on the first test. So, in brief, beginning with the order of operations, under normal circumstances that is PEMDAS, but given the cases where you have to dismantle a question to get x equals blank, we sometimes describe that as SATMEP. You send things from one side to the other in that reverse order so that you can just get x equals blank. Remember logarithms, how they relate to one another, how to dismantle those and sort of free the elements within them. As a brief refresher, make sure that I actually write it down correctly. Because I like having my notes in that long, but I need a better way to load them quickly. Sorry, guys. There we go. Those are the logarithm rules. You should remember those when presented with a logarithm problem similar to on the first homework. And remember how to add, multiply fractions together. The second assignment was dominated primarily by simply how to use your calculator correctly. This included functions like answer and insert. I'm less inclined to ask you a similar type of question where you are told, put this into your calculator, stop, and then edit it. This is mostly just remember these tricks because it will help you on everything else. So I'm not going to ask you a question that says, enter this all on one line, and then edit it, and then press enter. The purpose of that on the assignment was just to make sure you can use the functions. This is just tips for how to use it normally on other problems. So remember those, even though there's not necessarily going to be a question that asks you specifically use the insert function. Homework 3 is about polynomials and quadratics. Things to remember there are how to FOIL into each other, how to unfoil something that is foiled, and use of the quadratic formula. And this assignment right now, Remember the trig function, Pythagorean theorem. Additionally, the conversion between radians and degrees. I'm not going to hide that conversion from you. I figure that is a constant that people should know. So on the test, I will give certain things. I'll just write certain pieces of information on the board for free for everybody. You don't have to memorize the quadratic equation. I'll put it up here. I will also put up 360 degrees equals 2 pi. Just remember how to use those pieces of information. All of the questions on the test will be based on these things. And all the questions on the practice test that I upload will be based on these things. So if you look at this list, you feel comfortable with it, and you can use this knowledge on sample questions, you will be absolutely fine. And as a reminder, what we've just decided is this test will be next Wednesday. Friday, I'll be giving assignment 4 back, and talking about the grades on it, and looking at sample questions. Any questions, comments, needs, or concerns from you guys about anything at all? Yes.
I didn't print this out today because I thought we were just going over it, but I sent it to you.
That is more than fine, thank you. Yes, I do accept digital assignments. Just don't necessarily expect a paper copy back, but I will absolutely inform you of, where your points come from, where your points are going. So, if you are turning in a paper copy, on your way out of the room, make sure it is right here. You can take an extra day if you need it. Make sure your homework is here. I'll make sure it is graded and to you by Friday. Practice questions are going in today. I'm rambling at this point. You guys can't leave the room. I'm just filling dead air because I'm anxious, I guess. I don't know. I have problems. A wise person is not one who has no problem. A wise person is one who knows they have problems and does their best to do well despite them, because of them. Anyway, we all need counseling.
That's fair.
Have a wonderful day. I don't think I said that.